Today we are going to talk about a drama thriller film called Against the Ice from 2022. The movie is based on a true story and begins with the majestic scenery of Greenland in 1909. A lonely dog sled driven by Captain Einar Mikkelsen, a Danish polar explorer who knows full well that winter is coming, moves among the endless snow. He is carrying a frostbitten sailor, Jørgensen, from the Alabama, which has broken down due to ice. They arrive at the camp, where the rest of the crew with lanterns meet them, dragging the wounded man inside and giving him whiskey for courage. The captain amputates the sailor's blackened fingers, and a cry of pain echoes over the icy desert plunged into night. Later, the crew celebrates Christmas. The travelers listen to music, take photos together at the festive table. The captain makes a toast, which makes it clear that they are looking for the missing expedition of Ludvig Milius Eriksson, who explored this area several years ago. Jørgensen managed to find a diary and a map with Ludvig's supposed route. The captain decides to embark on a new journey across the glacier to find the messages left by his predecessors. If he fails to do so, the Americans may take over the north of Greenland. But for this, someone from the crew must go with him. The captain looks around at the sailors, but there are no volunteers for the dangerous mission. The next morning, the crew discusses whether there is a brave man who will go on the mission with them. Suddenly, a young mechanic, Ivar Iversen, responds. He has admired Mikkelsen since childhood, but despite the lack of other candidates, he does not immediately agree to take the young man as a partner. Later, Jørgensen teaches Ivar how to treat dogs, and not to get emotionally attached to them, because they are just a tool that should be discarded as soon as it becomes unnecessary. The sailors discuss Iversen's decision, and the captain consults with the experienced Jørgensen, whose fingers are frozen. The sailor tries to convince Einar not to take any chances with his inexperienced companion, but he decides to set off on a new expedition in the morning, the first day of the journey. Just before they leave, Ivar takes a picture of Einar as a souvenir. They have to overcome a 6-month journey across dangerous glaciers. 2 dog sleds with 2 brave men set off. By evening, they reach the mountain range they need to overcome. Together, they drag the dogs up the mountain. At the top, Iversen admires the scenery, while the pragmatic captain warns them to watch their step because the ice is full of crevices. At night, during a halt, Iversen tells the captain that he read his article about the missing expedition, but Einar is not in the mood for conversation. When his partner asks if they can let Bjorn, the lead dog, into the tent, the captain silently turns off the lamp, hinting that he is going to sleep. However, this gesture does not stop the friendly Iversen, and soon he is singing a song about their journey, and learns that the deceased leader of the missing team was a close friend of the captain. In the morning, Einar shows his partner a trick to move faster. You need to wet the sled with water to form thin ice. It does indeed allow them to move faster, but it almost turns into a disaster. Iversen fails to stop the dogs in time, which causes them to break off and damage the sled. The travelers have to spend time pulling out supplies and dogs. Bjorn, to whom Iversen has become emotionally attached, is hanging on a rope over a cliff. The traveler tries to save him, but the rope breaks, and the life of his 4-legged friend is cut short along with the rope. After a while, they count their losses. The captain scolds the sailor for violating the chain of command and expresses dissatisfaction with his behavior. The next day, they descend from the glacier and set foot on land. On the 48th day, Iversen asks why Einar is risking his life at all. The captain gives a vague answer that they need to make a map and understand what Greenland is. After that, they will have a chance to become famous. The travelers move on, checking the map of Milius Eriksson's proposed route. The situation is complicated by the terrain, and they often have to pull the sled uphill. Having climbed another hill, the captain looks around with disappointment. Unfortunately, there are no traces of the previous expedition anywhere. Einar's frustration turns to Iversen. He blames him for the breakdown of the device, without which they cannot survive here, because there is nothing to cook with. However, the sailor calmly repairs it, and then sacrifices one of the dogs because there is simply no food for everyone. After the loss of Bjorn, he finds such decisions easier to make, and he feeds the animals with their former comrade. On the 84th day, they run out of supplies. Remembering the previous conversation, Iversen wonders when they will realize that they need to go back and stop the futile and dangerous search. However, the captain insists on continuing the journey, offering to pull 1 sled instead of 2. Soon they find a pile of stones stacked as a landmark. The remains of a camp can be seen nearby, and inside are supplies and a message sealed in a metal cone. Ludvig Eriksson writes that they went along the coast in search of inhabited land because they ran out of food. He also left a hand-drawn map showing that there is no strait dividing Greenland. This means that the Americans have no rights to the island. After celebrating with the remaining supplies, the men head back to the Alabama. On the 132nd day of the journey, another dog died. Iverson gave it back to the rest of the dogs to feed them. For themselves, they boil the liver, testing it for poison, throwing a silver pendant into the broth. The silver changes color to brown, and the men decide to try the meat. It was a bad idea because a few minutes later they feel sick. Later, Iverson sees a seal near the camp. He takes his rifle off his shoulder, hoping to shoot the fresh meat, but the barking of dogs scares the animal away. Suddenly, he hears gunshots in the distance. Iverson runs to the camp, not knowing what happened. As he gets closer, he sees two torn dogs and a polar bear dragging the captain away. He shoots at the predator, but only wounds it in the paw. The second shot hits the heart, and the huge carcass falls on Einar. The captain is saved by the fact that he is tied to the sled, which slowly slides to the water under the weight of the bear's body. Iverson manages to run to them and cling to them, not letting either his partner or his modest supplies disappear. Fortunately, the captain was lucky. Apart from being bruised and hypothermic in the water, he was not injured. His strong clothes protected him from the bear's claws and teeth. However, the dogs are not doing well, as there is only one dog left, which is exhausted from hunger. When Iverson wakes up in the morning, he sees the captain breaking and burning the sled, as it is no longer needed. They continue on foot, and unfortunately, there are still more than 300 kilometers of travel ahead. On the 164th day, when they reach the bay, Captain Mikkelsen decides to build a cache. In it, he hides the maps and diaries of the previous expedition he found, and puts his notes as evidence. They set out on the thin ice themselves, as they have no time, energy, or supplies to go around the bay along the shore. Iverson suspects that a similar situation caused the death of Ludvig Eriksson's expedition. On the other shore, the younger man almost runs out of strength, but the captain drags him on. In the evening, they see a part of the Alabama over the ridge and run to it, but it turns out that it is only the wreckage of a ship destroyed by the bad weather. The sailors have dismantled the boats to build a shed, but the crew is long gone. The events are transferred to Denmark, where the crew members of the Alabama testify in court. They were forced to leave the ice-crushed ship before the captain and Iverson could return. Leaving behind provisions for a year, the sailors set sail, and are now asking the government to fund another expedition to Greenland to pick up their abandoned colleagues. However, the success of the operation is called into question by the fact that Mikkelsen's partner is a rookie mechanic. The chances of survival with such a person are simply minimal. Day 242. The captain and Iverson are sitting and discussing prospects. Einar is sure that sooner or later they will be picked up by a ship. Every day he goes ashore and looks at the horizon through his spyglass, hoping to see a ship. One day, the mechanic brings a broken gramophone from the shed. A little while later, music is playing from the pipe. One night, Mikkelsen has a nightmare. A polar bear finds a hiding place, destroys it, and the diary pages and maps are blown by the wind across the vast expanse, making all the sacrifices in vain. He wakes up with an obsession to go back and get the evidence. They pack their supplies and leave without even leaving a note. The captain hopes to return before the ice melts off the sea. The fears turned out to be partially justified, as the hiding place was indeed damaged, but the documents remained intact. On their way back, the travelers find the vehicle of the Eriksson expedition in the ice. On the 471st day, they return to the hut, where the snow has already melted and the expanse is covered in thick fog. However, this is not the worst thing, because someone has already been here. The door they had closed is now open, and there is a note on the table saying that they were searched for, but found no trace of them. The captain again took out his anger on Iverson, despite the fact that the young mechanic offered to leave a note before leaving. In Denmark, the minister reports that the sailors found a locked house, but Jørgensen claims that this is proof that the survivors did it, and they left the door open. He tries to convince the government to send the ship before the ice fettered the sea, but is refused. Travelers in Greenland are forced to celebrate their third Christmas on the island. Day 793. On his way back from the hunt, Iverson sees the captain writing something in a notebook in the street, not wanting to be distracted by conversation. A wound appears on his neck. In the morning, Einar climbs upstairs to look around the neighborhood. He sees a hot air balloon in the distance and waves his arms to attract attention. The balloon lands, and the balloonist turns out to be the woman from his dreams, but she is only a delusion. He is pulled out of the illusion by Iverson's voice. The woman continues to dream about him, and in conversations with her, the captain states that Iverson does not live up to expectations and blames him for the missed ship. Returning from patrol, the mechanic asks his friend if he believes in ghosts. He tells him that he met his grandfather at the top of a hill, who was supposedly dead. While answering the question, the captain keeps looking to the corner of the room, where he sees a non-existent woman. The nature of the hallucinations becomes more and more intrusive. The fact that the captain is dancing with an imaginary woman scares him in a hopeless situation. At one point, Einar chases a mechanic with a knife, but only to have him help him remove an abscess on his neck that is poisoning his body and mind. After the incision, the captain lies unconscious for a while, but when he comes to, he no longer sees the woman next to him. However, she reappears later. Iversen tells him that he also saw her, and Einar, in a fit of jealousy, throws his fists at the mechanic, but he manages to escape. The mechanic convinces his friend that he is only imagining things, but the latter still grabs the weapon. The noise of voices in his head makes him shoot at the wall. The roar helps him regain some of his senses. After hiding the rifle in the shed, Iversen sits down to dinner with the captain, discussing the fact that they are running low on food and ammunition. When they hear a suspicious noise from outside, they see a huge polar bear paw through the window. Locking themselves in, the men shout to scare it away, and the plan works. The bear leaves. Day 865. The men are awakened by a noise and decide that the bear is back. Armed, they run outside, but see an expedition that has come to rescue them. The Danish government reports on the successful exploration of the white spots on the map of Greenland by Captain Einar Mikkelsen and mechanic Ivar Iversen, who return home. The minister presents them with an award for their services. Before going on stage, Ivar discusses the Titanic, which is a technical marvel but sank on its maiden voyage. And Einar sees a woman from his visions backstage, but this time she is real. The mechanic sees her too. The heroes of the country go on stage to much applause. The film ends with a note about their fate. The captain married the woman and devoted his entire life to Greenland, while Iversen never returned to the Arctic. They remained friends for life.
If you have watched the video so far, you should know that I am happy to have viewers like you. Thank you for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel and follow the news. Klontsak Recapped was with you. See you soon.